So I've been feeling pretty nostalgic about the 2012 college football season, and a combination between watching the Manti Te'o documentary a few months ago and reading a book that I'll link in the description that detailed several teams in the 2012 college football year. It really, when you look back on it, was one of the best college seasons that we've seen of all time. And a lot of people will say 2007 for the craziness of it all, but really 2012 gets overlooked. There were a ton of awesome storylines that season. Obviously, with Manti Te'o, you look at the documentary and what everything happened there with Notre Dame. They had a fantastic season. Turned out to be a little fraudulent, but this is really what put them on the map. More about them in just a sec. But when you break it down, really there are four teams that I think define the 2012 college football season. And one of them, obviously, was Notre Dame. I think the second one that I think of, and a lot of Colt followers will think of, is Northern Illinois, too. Do you remember Northern Illinois in the season that they had in 2012? They went 12-2, lost to Iowa by 1 point in their first ever game that year. Then they lost in the BCS Bowl to Florida State. You see the BCS standings, those are still going on these days. You remember Jordan Lynch? That guy was a dude. He was a legend in the MAC. Actually went on to get a try in the NFL with the Chicago Bears and then kind of faded into obscurity. Of course, also that season we had the ultimate September Heisman. That was Geno Smith, who just freaking put up huge numbers in the month of September. You can see the 70-63 win over Baylor. You talk about a quick fall from grace. They started 5-0, then lost by 70-7 to Texas Tech in Lubbock, and then fell to 7-6 with a bowl game loss that year. South Carolina, you think back to what they did, the Gamecocks, kind of the peak of the Steve Spurrier years. He was out only 3 years after this, but South Carolina had success that they had never, ever seen in program history prior to this point. Some other things you think about that year, you think about NC State knocking off number 3 Florida State Jimbo back in October in a random game in Dave O'Brien's last year. So the first team that defines 2012 was Notre Dame. The second one is Northern Illinois. The third one has to be Kansas State. Think about Colin Klein, him going on an absolute tear down the stretch, winning his way to a Heisman. They destroyed that West Virginia team I was talking about a minute ago. I remember exactly where I was when they lost to an unranked Baylor team the year after RG3 and ultimately lost their perfect season in BCS hope. Who could forget the Florida-Georgia game this year? Really, for people my age, this is the defining Florida-Georgia moment that they remember Jordan Reed fumbling into the end zone. Kind of like 2007, there were a ton of top upsets. It wasn't like 2007 where you had the number 2 team losing like practically every week, but USC was a top 10 team. They went on the road and lost at Arizona. There's Notre Dame again. I remember exactly where I was when this happened. James Harden got traded from the Thunder to the Rockets this night in an NBA move, but this was really the Notre Dame is a national championship contender moment. LSU and Bama, of course, followed up the game of the century between number 1 and number 2 in the 9-6 game in 2011 with an absolute instant classic in 2012. And then, of course, the last team that I think of when I think of the 2012 season is the Texas A&M Aggies. And I've done a whole feature-length documentary on my channel about this 2012 team. But, I mean, this was magic, lightning in a bottle season. Johnny Manziel had his Heisman. They went and beat Alabama on the road. I always forget about this play. We really forget how close A&M was to losing this game to Shazer Everett, who had a nice NFL career, made a nice play there. We had Bedlam be walked off in overtime at home in Oklahoma. I feel like a lot of people forget about this game. There's not much better college football than that. Who could forget this ending in the SEC championship game as Aaron Murray made the biggest mistake of his career? Really one of the winningest and most successful players in college football never to have a national championship. Think about how far Georgia has come from this moment in 10 years. And, of course, it all came to a head in the BCS National Championship game between Notre Dame and Alabama when Notre Dame was completely exposed. We had the weird Brett Musburger moment, and this was just a dump. Let me know what I missed. Just a ton of great where were you when this happened moments. For sure, let me know in the comments. I'll be glad to get more of this stuff out. We'll see how this does. Thank you all for watching.